Endeavour is kicking ass and taking names, All might be dead, and oh my god, she's back! Let's talk about all of this and more as we dive right into the newest chapter of My Hero Academia. So My Hero Academia Chapter 311 is finally out, and with it we get to see Team Chicken Hot Pants, Endeavour Hawks and Best Jeanist kick some villain ass, all while still dealing with the ridicule of the general public. I mean, come on, all they did was murder some dudes, lie about their past, and do some pretty messed up things to their families. It's not that bad, right? The real tragedy is us not having more of the gloriousness that is Best Jeanist in the series until recently. Now that's protest worthy. In this chapter we get to see Endeavour using a brand new super move. There's more talk about the League of Villains and their plans, and we finally get our first real glimpse at the mysterious beauty that escaped from Tartarus prison. I knew she would be important! Someone better pick up that phone because I fucking called it! But before I begin talking about this chapter, I'm first going to go into a quick summary of what happened last time. And as usual, don't forget to Detroit smash that like button and slide into that subscribe button's DMs to hit that notification bell. In the last chapter, we got a nice little look into the current madness of the My Hero world. The chapter opens up with a giant fox woman who has probably awakened something in many of the comics readers being attacked by some fellow civilians. These so-called vigilantes began attacking the innocent fox lady due to her terrifying visage in the darkened area. But their unprovoked assault was quickly put to a stop by Mr. Main Man himself, All Might Jr., Izuku Midoriya. After scaring off the attackers and leaving the giant fox woman in the safety of All Might, Deku retreats to a building rooftop to eat the packed lunch Papa All Might gave him. Aw, he's such a wholesome boy. As Midoriya enjoys a little snack, the story flashes back to Midoriya's group counseling session with the previous users of One for All. And here, we finally got to see the faces of the second and third users of the quirk. Pop Pop. We learn the first user's name was Yoichi Shigaraki, and we get a little introduction to the two previous users. It's revealed that during the dark times of quirks, there was something of a war between those that followed All for One and those that didn't, with the ones who refused the Demon Lord's reign being forced to fight and kill just to survive. The second user mentions how he had to take countless lives in this conflict, and that it's because of Midoriya's hesitance to kill Shigaraki that he refuses to pass on his power. Anyone else really want something like a spin-off following All for One in his prime and the war efforts to prevent him from taking over the world? No? Just me? Alright. However, after hearing this, Yoichi calls out the second user, revealing that he was the one who saved Yoichi from his cell all those years ago, even though Yoichi was All for One's brother. After this reminder and a brief discussion, the two users who once refused to lend Deku their power decide to finally join the fight, and Chapter 310 comes to an end with Deku eating his lunch with all of the previous users' vestiges standing behind him. And this is where Chapter 311 picks up. This chapter opens up right into action. We see a group of villains in a convenience store unleashing a torrent of gunfire upon the flaming ember of justice, the #1 hero, Endeavour. While fighting these villains, Endeavour notices that the villains attacking him are using modified support items which were created by Detnerat, the company which is owned by the one-time leader of the Liberation Army, Reed Destro. You know, the guy Shigaraki went full beast mode on and took his legs? Endeavour, having enough of the villain's rampage, decides it's time to put an end to the fight, and pulls out his new super move, Ignited Arrow, which seems very similar to this move he used against Nomu during the Hosu incident. Unable to handle the pure heat of Endeavor's burning flames, the villains are quickly defeated, but before they get taken away by the hero, they shout out how ridiculous it is that they were taken down by Endeavour, because he's the one who started all of this chaos in the first place. Hearing this, Endeavour acknowledges the villain's statement, saying, "That's why I am here." Again, we get the classic "I am here" line, but this time it feels different. Rather than being the hopeful, "Don't worry, I am here to save you," it's more along the lines of, "I am here to fix my mistakes," which I think very much suits the character of Endeavour a lot better, and it helps separate him from All Might. After the villains are defeated, Endeavour, Jeanist, and Hawks hand them over to the police. The three heroes then mention how these villains were also escapees from prison, and just like all of the previous jailbreakers they've arrested, they know absolutely nothing about All for One's escape or location. However, this conversation gets abruptly interrupted as a pipe flies by Endeavor's shoe and it's revealed that a group of protesters have arrived and they begin ridiculing the three heroes. The protesters mention how the world wouldn't have turned out like this if the heroes had just defeated Shigaraki in the war. And they also bring up the point that it was all over the news that Shigaraki is hunting someone, and they gave out to Endeavour, exclaiming that he is still keeping secrets. This attack, mainly against Endeavour, continues as they throw abuse at him, telling him that his presence brings nothing but bad fortune, and they question if he has even seen the family members of all of Dabi's burn victims. Choosing to ignore all of this hate, Hawks tells Endeavour they just have to leave, and the scene ends with Endeavour walking away as he, Genist, and Hawks get bombarded by both abuse and trash from the protesters. Now I gotta say, the protesters' hatred and anger towards Endeavour is kind of questionable. I mean, yes, he most certainly did abuse his kids and wife, he lied to the public, he is still lying to the public about things, and he should feel at least some responsibility for Dabi's turn to villainy and all of his actions. No one should disagree with that, all of that is bad. No ifs, no buts, no coconuts. And if you feel you're justified in hating Endeavour for all of these actions, then who am I to say otherwise? I mean, it's most certainly understandable. However, I will bring up the point that Endeavour never stopped saving people, and he still hasn't. Like, no, of course, this 100% does not make up for the abuse. I think that's something we can all agree on. But what I find interesting is, if it wasn't for Endeavour's unrelenting drive to be the best, the world would have been destroyed. If it wasn't for him, they wouldn't have stood a chance against High End. He stopped countless villains, and I believe overall he has taken down more baddies than even All Might. Also, he played an absolute massive role in the war arc, and if he wasn't there, things would have turned out a hell of a lot worse. Plus, the current secret he is keeping from the public is One for All, a power that if knowledge of its existence got out to the world could cause it to descend into further chaos. Endeavour has most certainly done some absolutely horrible things, but you can't argue that when the going gets tough, he's one of the very, very few people who steps up. But let me know what you think about the current view of Endeavour below. I'm really curious to see everyone's opinion. Do you think he deserves the hate, or do you think his actions of doing good help outweigh some of his bad? But anyway, as Team Chicken Hot Pants leave the scene in the Denomobile, Hawks gets on the phone with the number 4 hero Edgeshot, who informs Hawks that he still has found 0 clues on the whereabouts of the League. After Hawks hangs up, he mentions how they should still keep their distance from Midoriya, and Endeavour agrees, saying that there is enough stress on Midoriya already with him working as bait for the League. The last thing he needs is the public after him too. Genist then points out how strange it is that the League hasn't attacked yet. The world is in chaos and the heroes are both limited and disorganized. Now would be the perfect time to make an assault. But as Endeavour mentions, All for One himself is currently weak and is dependent on machinery to live. So his top priority at the moment isn't to take over the world, but to take over Shigaraki's body. And once Shigaraki's body has been taken, then he will be on the hunt for One for All. However, in hearing all of this, Hawks butts in saying he doesn't fully understand that plan. He gets how All for One would need a strong body to take One for All, but what he doesn't get is why All for One needs specifically Shigaraki's. It is said that for All for One to take One for All, the user would need a strong enough will to overpower the will of all of One for All's previous users. And it's believed that All for One chose Shigaraki because he believes Shigaraki's hatred is that powerful. But Hawks brings up the great point, All for One has been chasing his brother's power for literal centuries. So how is it that Shigaraki has a stronger will than him? And I mean, that's actually a really good point. How is it that this kid supposedly has more hatred dwelling inside of him than a person who has angrily tried and tried for hundreds of years to defeat his younger brother's power? It doesn't really make sense. That is, unless there is something more to Shigaraki. Could it be he has a hidden power we just don't know about? Or is it that willpower isn't the only thing needed to take One for All? This conversation about Shigaraki ends as Genist asks Hawks if he believes Shigaraki could possess that much hatred, to which Hawks replies, maybe not. After all, that guy's always laughing. Endeavour then makes a quick comment about how that's due to his lack of heart, and the comment conversation changes to their plans going forward. They know that the League won't be active until All for One is fully transferred, so they think they should focus more manpower on the investigation while things are relatively safe. However, this conversation comes to a halt as the hero's tracking beacon on Midoriya begins to beep. The story then cuts to All Might, who is driving in his car tracking down Midoriya. It's a nice little moment where All Might thinks to himself how Midoriya hasn't gotten any sleep and that he needs to rest. But as he thinks this, he remembers how Sir Night Eye used to say the exact same thing to him. I thought this was a really nice moment. When you're the one in the thick of a conflict or an ordeal, oftentimes you're too busy focusing on the task at hand to think about how it is affecting you. However, the people who care about you will usually notice immediately. When All Might was the one saving lives, he didn't care about his own well-being and focused solely on the task at hand. However, now that he's not the one out there, he can finally see things from his friend's perspective. It's cool to see the little development of his character like this, and it shows that he too is growing. But this moment is very short-lived, as his tracker on Midoriya beeps just like it did in Genist's car, and it's revealed that this beep was to signify that Midoriya's tracking beacon has vanished. And just as All Might notices this and begins to panic, a grenade appears beside his car window. And this scene leaves us with the final image of an explosion and All Might and his car nowhere to be seen. Is All Might dead? Probably not. I mean, come on, they wouldn't kill off a beloved character like that, would they? Would they? And on this intense note, the story cuts back to Midoriya, and we see that his tracking beacon was shot out of his hand by a bullet. Out of this bullet, a voice appears saying, "Young boy in green, we'll take you with us." And as Midoriya looks on realizing that someone connected to the League has finally appeared, the chapter ends revealing who this mysterious assassin is. And it's none other than the mysterious woman from Tartarus. And holy sweet Jesus, does she look awesome. Like, I knew she would be important, but god damn, she has a sniper in her elbow. And wait a minute, is that Overhaul? Overall, I really enjoyed this chapter. Seeing Team Chick and Hot Pants together is always an absolute delight, and I loved their dynamic. Hawks' point about why All for One chose Shigaraki was also really interesting, and I very much believe it might be foreshadowing something bigger for the character. All Might realizing how much Sir Night Eye cared for him was a lovely bittersweet moment. And for the grand reveal of the new villain, she looks absolutely amazing. And I cannot wait to see what happens next. Also, I want to point out that she says, "We'll take you with us," implying she is not alone. And the dark-haired, no-armed man behind her looks very similar to Overhaul. Is she connected to Overhaul somehow? Or could it be that she's not working for the League at all, and her and Overhaul have their own agenda? But let me know what you think of this chapter. If you like this video, don't forget to leave a like and comment what you think is going to happen next. For more My Hero content, subscribe to the LunchTime crew. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Plus Ultra.